Prime Minister Mark Carney's barely a month in office, and he's already accepting lavish gifts from foreign leaders.
In just 10 years, Canada racked up the largest government spending and debt increase in the G7, nearly outpacing every advanced country on Earth.
Canada is building fewer homes in 2025 than it did last year, and the biggest slowdowns are coming from Ontario and British Columbia. Hello, Canada. It's Tuesday, May 20th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Cosmin, Dzsurdzsa.
And I'm Geoff Knight.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. Despite having only held office for a few months, Prime Minister Mark Carney has already received several expensive gifts from world leaders on international visits. Just days after being sworn in on March 14th, Carney embarked on a European tour, stopping in the United Kingdom to meet with Prime Minister Keir Starmer and in France to meet President Emmanuel Macron. During his meeting in Paris, President Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron presented Carney with a bottle of Chateau Lynch-Bages 2014, a prestigious red wine from France. According to winesearcher.com, this vintage averages $208 or approximately 291 Canadian dollars, far more than the cost of a typical bottle of red wine. The Macrons also gifted Carney a bottle of Martel Cordon Bleu Cognac, a premium spirit produced in Cognac, France. A bottle of the same cognac retails for $292.75 at Ontario's provincial liquor store, significantly above the price of an average 750 milliliter bottle of cognac. In addition, President Macron gave Carney a necktie from the French luxury fashion house Hermes. Known for its high-end apparel and steep price tags, Hermes ties typically cost around $325, with some priced as high as $1,400. While in London, England, Carney received a laser-engraved crystal bowl featuring the iconic 10 Downing Street door, a gift from Prime Minister Starmer. Carney disclosed receiving these gifts a week after his European trip. However, no official estimates of their individual or total value were provided. According to public disclosure rules, the Prime Minister and all members of Parliament must declare any gift worth $200 or more. Geoff, there is a set of rules that determine how politicians, elected representatives, are supposed to receive and process these gifts. Could you elaborate on some of these procedures regarding gift disclosures in the House of Commons? And what sort of penalties apply for failing to report gifts that are worth over a certain amount?
Yeah, so you're talking about the Federal Conflict of Interest Act, which applies to public office holders, including members of Parliament and the Prime Minister himself. The act mandates that any gift or benefit worth $200 or more from a single source within a 12-month period must be publicly disclosed within 60 days of receipt. This threshold applies regardless of whether the gift is deemed acceptable. Acceptance is only permitted if the gift is a result of protocol, customary diplomatic practice, or a courtesy, as is likely the case with Carney's gifts from Macron and Starmer. Gifts below $200 don't require public disclosure, but must still be reported internally if they could be seen as influencing the official's duties. Additionally, the Act prohibits gifts that might reasonably be seen to influence decision-making, even if under the threshold, to prevent conflicts of interest. Penalties for failing to report gifts over the $200 threshold can be significant. The Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner can impose fines of up to $500 per infraction for late or non-disclosure, and these violations are made public, potentially damaging an official's reputation. More severe breaches, like accepting a gift that creates a conflict of interest, can lead to further investigation, with the Commissioner able to recommend sanctions, including suspension or other disciplinary actions by the House of Commons. For cabinet ministers like Carney, the Prime Minister's office could also intervene, potentially leading to a cabinet shuffle or resignation if the violation is deemed serious enough. These rules aim to ensure transparency and maintain public trust, especially for high-profile figures receiving valuable gifts like the laser-engraved crystal bowl Carney got from Starmer, which likely exceeds the disclosure threshold. Canada measured the largest increase in government spending and debt burden among G7 countries and nearly the highest among advanced countries over the last 10 years. A recent study by the Fraser Institute found that Canada's growth in debt burden and government size outpaced virtually every advanced country in the world. Between 2014 and 2024, Canada saw a 6.3% increase in government spending and a 25.2% increase in its debt burden. The study took data from the International Monetary Fund's World Economic Outlook database, highlighting the economies of 40 advanced countries. Out of the pack, Canada had the second largest increase in the size of its government out of any advanced economy during the 10 years marked almost entirely by Liberal government rule. Canada had the most significant government spending growth in the G7 and was second only to Estonia out of all the countries compared. Canada's gross debt as a share of its GDP increased by the third largest amount of any advanced economy between 2014 and 2024, behind only Singapore and San Marino. Half of the countries reduced their debt as a share of their economies during the same time. In 10 years, advanced economies experienced an average 2.79% decline in their total debt burden. In 2014, Canada's government spent 38.4% of its national economy, ranking 25th highest among advanced economies. But by 2024, its total spending rose to 44.7% of GDP, landing its 17th highest. At the same time, France reduced its spending by 1.2% and Italy by 0.2%. The US saw a 2.3% increase in spending and a 16.4% increase to its debt burden. Similarly, Canada's gross debt represented 85.5% of GDP in 2014, and was the 14th highest of those 40 advanced countries. After 10 years of Liberal reign, the burden rose to 110.8% of GDP, and Canada now has the seventh highest debt to GDP burden among advanced economies. While Canada's debt and spending grew faster than most other advanced countries, 20 advanced economies were able to reduce their debt burdens over the decade. The report's authors warned that increasing debt would mean the Canadian taxpayer would have to foot an ever-increasing bill on debt interest, which could lead to worsening economic growth and declining living standards. So, Cosmin, are there any other economic organizations showing that Canada is not performing as well as it should economically?
Yeah, some of the figures you mentioned are part of the OECD data as well, and they've been reporting some pretty bleak projections for the Canadian economy. So recently they put out a report including long-term forecasts for Canada, and it found that since 2014, Canada has ranked the third lowest in GDP per capita growth out of the 30 OECD countries. And compared to some of our peers that we actually used to lead, allies like the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, we are losing ground, particularly over the 10-year span from 2012 to 2022, and it's continuing to trend downwards. And our gap with the United States, our biggest trading partner, is also widening. So Canada's GDP per capita dropped from 80.4% of the US level in 2012 to just 72.3% by 2022. Additionally, like when they project into the future, all the way up to 2060, Canada is projected to have the lowest GDP per capita growth in the entire OECD. And some of the reasons they cite for this is weak productivity. Canada is just simply not generating more economic value per worker. And on top of that, when you look at the policy measures introduced over the last 10 years, they have burdened companies and entrepreneurs who would otherwise be willing to invest in the Canadian economy and create jobs. Now, in turn, they are turning elsewhere. Housing starts in 2025 are down compared to last year, with large provinces like Ontario and British Columbia standing out as poor performers. According to the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, 67,022 residential housing starts were reported from January to April 2025, down from the 68,107 housing starts during the same period. While some provinces saw their housing starts rise substantially, two of Canada's biggest provinces, Ontario and British Columbia, saw significant regression. Builders in Ontario managed to start 23,434 residential housing projects from January to April in 2024, but have only started 16,115 housing projects during the same time this year, marking a 31.2% decline. The collapse of housing starts in Toronto was a major driver of the poor results, as 15,202 housing starts last year plummeted to 7,362 housing starts this year. That's a 51.6% drop. Overall, Ontario had already suffered a 12% drop in housing starts from 2023 to 2024 during these 4 months. In British Columbia, the province managed 15,212 housing starts in 2024 from January to April, but saw a 22.1% decline this year, down to 11,839 housing starts. In August 2023, Ontario Premier Doug Ford promised to build 1.5 million new homes by 2031, but is set to fall far short of the goal at current home building rates. In April 2024, former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a similar promise to build nearly 3.9 million homes by 2031. However, as there were only 227,697 housing starts in 2024, Canada is on track to building 1.82 million homes by 2031, less than half of the promised amount. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney has pledged to double the rate of home development to 500,000 per year by 2030, creating a government entity to build homes called Build Canada Homes and cutting the GST for first-time home buyers for properties up to $1 million. Geoff, with the new cabinet, Canada has a new housing minister, former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson. Is Prime Minister Mark Carney's pick for the housing minister equipped to deal with tackling this ongoing housing crisis?
Yeah, the housing minister, Gregor Robertson, faces significant skepticism about his ability to tackle this housing crisis, given his track record and the current downturn in housing starts. Robertson, who was appointed housing minister after serving as Vancouver mayor, oversaw a 179% rise in housing prices during his tenure, making Vancouver one of North America's most unaffordable markets. This history raises doubts about his ability to address the crisis effectively, especially as British Columbia, his home province, saw a 22.1% decline in housing starts from 15,212 in 2024 to 11,839 in 2025, with Vancouver itself dropping 24.8%. Ontario, another key region, experienced a 31.2% decline, with cities like Toronto seeing a 51.6% drop, underscoring the scale of the challenge Robertson inherits. Carney's housing plan, which includes doubling home development to 500,000 units per year by 2030 through Build Canada Homes and cutting GST for first-time home buyers on homes up to $1 million, demands a minister who can reverse these trends. However, Robertson's past suggests a focus on urban density over affordability. Vancouver's reliance on high-rise condos during his mayoral term didn't curb price growth, and with 61% of Canadians preferring single-family homes per the Wahi survey, his approach may not align with public demand. Critics argue his experience leans more towards managing growth in a single city rather than addressing a national crisis, especially with Canada on track to build only 1.82 million homes by 2031, far short of Trudeau's 3.9 million goal. Robertson's appointment seems more symbolic than strategic, leaving many questioning whether he can deliver on Carney's ambitious targets.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.